My brother-in-law just told my wife that he's in love with her. Yesterday, my brother-in-law, out of the blue, asked my wife if she could meet him for lunch. There's something he needs to talk to her about. My wife tells me about it before accepting and asks if it might have something to do with my sister. Maybe they are having problems and he wants to discuss with another woman. I find it odd, but I tell her to go find out. So she accepts and they meet for lunch at a place near her office the next day. That's where he tells her that he's in love with her. He lays it on thick, how beautiful she is, how she makes him feel, how he would treat her if she were his, how it was love at first sight, blah, blah, blah. Mind you, this man is married to my sister and has 2 kids. He and my wife had a friendly relationship. Our families see each other often as we are a close family. He does text her frequently, but there was nothing overly sexual. My brother-in-law texts and calls my mom too, so none of us thought anything of it. I want to stop a moment and emphasize that my wife isn't cheating on me with him. My wife and I share an iPad, and I see every one of her texts from there. We are also looking at each other's phones all the time, so none of that is going on. So she doesn't let him finish, walks out, and calls me immediately to tell me what happened. While she's on the phone with me, the texts from him start. He didn't mean it. He thinks it's only infatuation, blah blah. She leaves work early to come home to talk to me about this, and her phone is blowing up the entire time with calls and texts from him. I tell her to answer, and she puts him on speaker so I can hear. He's crying, begging not to tell my sister. Apparently, when we're together this past weekend, he thought that she was flirting with him and that he thought they had a moment when they were alone in our kitchen. Now, my wife is a major ballbuster, and I suppose I can see how that can be taken as flirting. He asked if she told me, to which I answer yes, I am on speaker. Then he starts begging me. This went on a while. My main question was whether he had cheated on my sister before. He said no, swore on his kids' lives. It's just my wife. He said I should understand. So I'm done listening at this point and told him I wasn't going to do anything tonight and I would call him tomorrow. That's where we are right now and I really don't know what to do. My wife says drive over there right now and tell my sister, but the idea of wrecking my sister's family is killing me. Thinking about what it will do to my nieces makes me want to vomit. I know the right thing to do is to tell my sister, but I'm also thinking about my wife as well. It's not her fault, but there is sure to be resentment towards her from my family. Even if my sister doesn't divorce him and they reconcile, I can't see how we are ever together again like we were before, if at all. This whole episode can tear my family apart. I don't give a shit about him. He tried to destroy my family, but I do care about everyone else. I don't know what to do. Any advice would help. Oh, we have an update. A little after 12 last night, I get a call from my sister and she says that she has to tell me that my wife tried to begin an affair with her husband, so he tried to pin it on her. I told her that's not the case and I'll be right over. So I get on the phone, wake my mother and father, tell them what's going on, and wake my younger brother, and I tell him. My mom and dad head to my sister's to sit with their kids. My brother comes to our house to sit with ours, and my wife and I head over. My sister is out on the porch with my brother-in-law when we get there. He looks beaten. He knows we have texts and voicemails. I really don't know what he was hoping to accomplish. My wife gives my sister her phone. She sees the text, listens to the voicemail, and he starts sobbing before she can say anything. My brother-in-law is a firefighter, a big tough guy, so this is a scene. My sister is pretty tough. She tells him to stop it, pack a bag, and go. She can't stand to look at him. There's more begging, but she has no patience for it. So my sister walks off to talk with my wife. I see them hugging, so at least I feel like they're okay. They've actually been friends since college. I met my wife through my sister, so they are tight. The thought of wrecking her friendship had been weighing on me. This leaves me with my brother-in-law. He's broken, so I feel more sympathy than anger. He says he's sorry, he just couldn't help it. It's not hard to fall in love with my wife, so I do get it, but damn. He eventually picks himself up and leaves. So we are there all night. My sister starts asking my wife why her husband would think any of this would work out. He had to have some reason to believe that she felt the same way. My sister says they hadn't been having problems. Everything was as it had always been. My wife is crying at this point and says there's nothing you haven't seen. She gives my sister her phone again and they read every text ever sent over the past 2 years. Nothing there. My wife was just herself. She has a playful personality and so does my brother-in-law, so they tease each other. She does the same to my mom and younger brother as well. The only thing she can think of was the moment in the kitchen this past weekend he referenced. They both went for the fridge at the same time and they playfully jostled for who would get there first. He lets her win, but he reaches around her waist to get a beer slowly, and she did feel the way he did it was a little inappropriate. She says she should have called him out on it but didn't want to make it a big thing. She feels maybe that the fact that she didn't gave him hope. My sister doesn't blame her, so at least that's good. So then my sister starts going through his MacBook to see what else she doesn't know about. She's so angry and frantic at this point. She gets his passwords, starts searching, and finds a lot of pictures of my wife on that computer. They went back years and always isolated on just her. We had gone as couples to the Caribbean a few years earlier. My wife wore a bikini. She usually doesn't, but since it was adults only, she did. There were probably 50 pictures of her in that bathing suit. So he's been secretly snapping these for years. Does this now enter restraining order territory? This has taken a creepy turn. I'll update when I have more. Unfortunately, the mess continues. My sister agreed to talk to her husband last night and let him explain. Puts my wife on FaceTime during this conversation so there will be no lying. I'm listening in as well off camera. My sister is also recording the whole thing. He admits he's been obsessed with my wife for years. It started the day he met her. My wife and I were dating at the time, but he met my wife before he met me. Like I said, my wife and sister are longtime friends, and my sister wanted to introduce her boyfriend to her friends. He thought it was only physical for a while, but over time he knew it was more. My sister nearly kicks him out right there, but listens a little more, and she eventually asks what made him think my wife would leave me for him. He answers that there is obviously mutual attraction and he figured it would begin as an affair and then things would progress from there. My wife and sister explode at this point, a lot of cussing and a lot of screaming. Phone call is over, my wife hangs up because at this point she's concerned for me. She's shaken and distraught, assures me the attraction was one-sided. I never thought it wasn't. Even if she did find him physically attractive, I know she would never act on it. She's just not the type. Early on in our relationship, she caught me admiring her as she was dressing, asked if I liked what I saw before her face turned cold and told me to never up or I'd never see it again. She meant it. She's serious about trust. Anyway, I knew my brother-in-law was a little cocky, but oh my god, I never knew he thought that highly of himself to be able to pull off something like this. I talked to my sister later on and she's contacting the lawyer Monday to see what steps she can take to limit his exposure to her kids. As far as she's concerned, he is detached from reality. That's all I have now.
My name is Angelique Robledo, and my son and I are survivors of attempted fetal abduction. Specifically for me and for my case, I was 18 years old. I was a senior in high school. I was pregnant, and I became friends with another girl that stated that she was pregnant also. We had bonded, gotten close, and time went by, and I decided to invite her over to my house. So at this point, I was 9 months pregnant. There was a lot of stuff that happened in between, but nothing too exciting. She came to my house and my parents were there, my brothers were there, we were not home alone. And she had stayed at my house literally from morning to night. So nighttime came around and my mom left us there because she went to go take my brothers to football practice. That is when things got like really, really weird and she started acting like completely different. Originally, the reason why she came over to my house was because she missed my baby shower. So she stated that she had all these gifts that she wanted to give to me. She came over with this like large diaper bag and there were presents inside. And she put this chair in the middle of my kitchen, told me to turn around and close my eyes, and that she like wanted to bring me the presents. So like one by one, she would drop a present in my lap. And it was definitely like a really weird situation because I've never had presents given to me. I don't think that anybody actually does that, but I didn't want to be rude. And they were presents. So like she was dropping things in my lap and it was like a receiving blanket, little booties, a blanket, a onesie. Like honestly, like it was like one of everything to take a baby. Like now that we know what the like end goal was, it was literally one of everything. The last thing she brought me was like this baby carrier. And I know those things were expensive. It's like one of those like baby wearing things. And guys, this was also like 12 years ago. So we had just like generic looking ones. But I was super excited about it because I didn't get one for my baby shower and I thanked her. She then stated that she had one last gift to give me. And earlier in the daytime, I was talking about how like I really wanted to get one of those pillow pets, I think they were called. And what they did is they shined on the ceiling and it was like lights and it played music. And again, 12 years ago. So like those things were super cool and I really, really wanted one. She had stated that she got me one, but she wanted to show me in my room because it was just getting dark. And I was a little confused on why, but she had stated it was because it was specially made for Ryland. She was like, you're going to love it. Like I had it specially made for him. And so in my head, I'm thinking like, what did she do? Did she have like his name like put in there? Like, I don't know, but like, I'm ready to find out. So I go to the room, she turns around, closes my door, turns the lights off. And at this point it is completely like pitch dark in my room. I can't really see anything and nothing has happened throughout the day that has made me think like that I'm in danger. But she told me to turn around and close my eyes like she did earlier. And that was a little weird to me because I was like, okay, well, it's like really dark already, but whatever. So I turned around, didn't close my eyes, and I could hear her like behind me, like putting her hand in the diaper bag. And as that was happening, I was having like these intuition feelings, these thoughts. Only way that I can describe it to you guys is it was like somebody was literally whispering in my ear, telling me what was going to happen before it even happened. So I started having these like really weird thoughts. of thinking like, what would you do if she were to hurt you? How would you protect yourself? What if she were to stab you? And like instantly, like my brain was like, what are you doing, Angelique? Like, stop thinking like that. Like, nobody would ever want to hurt you. Like, your friend would never want to hurt you. But I could not get like this thought out of my head that I was literally about to be hurt, like stabbed. It wasn't even just hurt. Like, specifically, if you like in my police like tapes and everything, I specifically say stabbed. Like, that is what I ultimately thought was going to happen to me. But there also was like nothing that made me think that, just the fact that I felt nervous. So I'm sitting in there, and what feels like is like 5 minutes, it's literally like, I don't know, 30 seconds. And I end up grabbing my phone and putting my mom's phone number in my phone. At this point, it was a flip phone. And I had put it to my chest and put my finger on the call button. And I thought in my head, if I were to get stabbed or if anything were to happen to me, like, I can call my mom, and like worst case scenario, she can hear the voicemail. Like, I went really, really deep into thinking I was going to die. So it sounds crazy, but that is literally how my intuition, like that was what my gut feeling, the intuition feeling, whatever you want to call it. God, at this point, I don't know, just this voice is inside my head telling me I'm going to die. So I stand up and I tell her, okay, let me go ahead and sit on the bed because my back is hurting. At this point, it's like still really, really dark, but I can see shadows. So it made me feel a little bit better. But then what she did is she grabbed the bag, came up behind the bed, like on my bed, and put her hand on my shoulder. And she's like, okay, are you ready? And I was like, what are you doing? She's like, I'm going to put the light over your head so that you can see it. And it's going to shine against like your closet doors. And I was like, what? And she was like, are you ready? And she put her hand on my shoulder. She leaned me forward. I'm 9 months pregnant, so my belly is huge. And she goes, 1, 2. And like, as she starts saying 3, something inside of my head said, get up. Like, it was like a loud, get up. And so I got up as fast as I could, went and turned the light on, turned around, and she was, I don't know what she was doing. She was startled. Her phone rang. She said it was her husband. It distracted me, and she started talking to somebody in Spanish. So I walked out of the room and I started to collect my thoughts and thinking, what the fuck is going on? So I've watched way too many crime shows to know that you do not let them know that you know, like, you know that you're going to die. Like, I wasn't going to sit there and start arguing with her or start like accusing her, because at this point I'm like, holy shit. Like, if she knows that I know, then like, I'm a goner. Like, I'm going to die. Me and my baby are going to die. But then I also started thinking, what if I'm wrong? Like, what if I am wrong? I'm 18 years old. I am a senior in high school. You cannot fault me for thinking like a teenager. Like, what if I'm wrong? And then I call the cops, and then it was all a misunderstanding. And now the whole school thinks I'm crazy because I just called the cops on our friend and said she was going to kill me and take my baby. Like, that sounds crazy coming out loud. So I didn't do that. So instead, I played it smart. I waited around. Other things went by. And long story short, it ended up turning into my closet getting on fire. I put the fire out. The paramedics came. Firefighter department came. It was the whole shebang. My whole closet was in flames. Long story short, I'm trying to like make this fast, but we end up, like, the paramedics and everybody show up, and she's faking contractions. I'm having real contractions. I still have no idea how the fire started in my house. I know it's her. Like, self-consciously, I know she's the one that started the fire in my house because she was trying to kill me. But I end up telling my best friend, who is there at the house with us, because he lived right down the street. And so like I'm talking too fast. I called him in panic mode when my house was on fire because he was the last person that called me. So he showed up there with his parents. My mom and dad were there. You know, everybody's there. And I tell my best friend, I think she was trying to kill me. I had this weird feeling. I felt like a knife was to my back the whole time. And he thought I was crazy. I said, please don't tell anybody. Like, we're going to try to see if the fire department can figure out what happened, like what started the fire. So they're doing their investigation. She is laughing in the corner, like as if this is all funny and a joke. And I'm just like, this girl's crazy. Like, what is going on? And so Skylar obviously tells his mom, because who's like not going to tell their parents that their friend thinks they're going to die? You know what I mean? Like, really? Like a pinky promise? He broke it, but you know, whatever. So he told his mom told my parents. This is all happening like while we're all being checked out. And my parents like give me the look, and they're like, and I'm like, shit, Skylar told. So then we go back and I tell my parents what happened. I tell them in front of the cops. I tell them in front of everybody. Cassandra is still outside being checked out by the paramedics because she's having contractions. Like how I use those air quotes, contractions. And at this point, we have the bag. And I'm telling my parents she had this bag. She stated she was gonna, like, there was this light in this bag. If the light is in the bag, then I'm crazy. Like, I'm crazy. Like, obviously there's something else going on here. There's an explanation. But when I put my hand in the bags, the first things my hand touched were 2 butcher knives. 2 large butcher knives, a pair of scissors, disinfectant, and I started screaming because I told everybody I knew that she was trying to kill me. Like, there was just this weird gut intuition feeling that I was about to die, and I just could not go past it. But let's go back on some of the parts that are like the in-between. I feel like these can be like really good signs to look for in like a friend that meets you when you're pregnant, or just like some certain things that may make more sense. We were both supposedly pregnant, and I say pregnant because I'm sure you figured out that no, she wasn't pregnant. But this whole time, me and my friends and family and everybody that like knows her thinks that she is. She kept on stating that she had a husband and that his name was Edwin. Nobody had ever met Edwin, but we did hear her like talking on the phone with this person, and she only ever spoke to him in Spanish, which is like a big key. Now, some certain things that happened like in between, like her being at my house and her trying to kill me, there were certain things that like I missed, and certain, I guess you can say, red flags. And I guess this is the perfect opportunity just to go over those, because I'm sure by now, if you looked at my page, you have seen like the Dr. Phil show, you've seen him victim blame me, you've seen him bring up the red flags, because these questions are being asked all in that last video. So let's kind of just discuss the red flags. As I discussed, she had stayed from my house to morning tonight, so obviously a lot of stuff happened. We did like normal girl things, like we watched I think it was 16 and Pregnant or Teen Mom or something that was on at that point. And I do remember we had like a full discussion about like C-sections. Now my mom had had a C-section before, and we lived in a small town, which was in Maricopa, Arizona. There is no hospital. The closest one is like 45 minutes away. So we did like discuss very briefly C-sections. And I remember Cassandra standing up and like asking my mom, like, well, where do they cut? How do they cut? Like, what happens? And my mom was just like, oh, like they just cut like, you know, like right here. And Cassandra literally stood up and was like, where? And she like pulled her her shorts down and was like, where? Like, she wanted to know exactly where. And these were just things that like I was like, oh, well, she's scared that maybe she'll have a C-section. So little did we know, like, we were actually like feeding her information that she may have only gotten off the internet. But at this time, she's like, oh, this woman has had a C-section, so let me just get some more. I did feel like at some point she was mimicking my life. I feel like every time that I said something about myself, like for an example, I was a really bad kid. I ran away a lot. I did drugs. Like, it was a whole thing. And I remember bringing up like certain situations and her having the exact same story and being like, oh yeah, oh my gosh, I did the exact same thing. And her story mimicked mine completely. And there was a point in time where I asked my mom, like, do you think she's weird? Like, what do you think about her? And my mom was like, no, I just think that she needs a lot of attention. Like, she had lost her mom. She lost her dad. She was living with her sister. She was new to our town. She was pregnant. She just newly got married. She was a dropout. Like, there were so many components as to why my mom was like, you have to understand, Angelique, like, she probably just lives like a hard life. So my take of her being weird was just like what I was thinking. And I don't know, my mom absolutely made me feel better about the situation, but there was definitely something off about her. She kept calling me lazy, and the reason she kept calling me lazy was because she kept on wanting to leave my house and go for a walk. I can't even tell you how many times she tried to get me out of that house to go for a walk, and I kept telling her no, like, I don't want to go for a walk. Like, I am 9 months pregnant, you are 6 months pregnant, and there is a huge like difference. Like, I do not want to go outside. It is hot out there, and I just didn't want to. But this is remember this, okay? Remember this, because this is going to come up later on as to why she wanted me to go to the park with her and why she constantly kept doing it and like asking me. If you haven't figured out yet, there's going to be like a huge plot twist to my story. So just wait. So time has gone by, we've eaten, we've hung out, it's been hours. I did try to get her to go home at one point. Like, I remember yawning and being like, oh, I'm so tired. And she was like, oh, I can't go home right now because no one's there. I forgot my key. My sister's not home. Like, she had all these excuses as to why she couldn't leave. So I was like, crap, okay. She's just going to stay here with us. It's fine. Like, I'm just going to be friendly and we're just going to be fine. So time has gone by, and my mom decided, my mom had to go take my brothers to football practice. So my mom actually offered to take us to football practice also. She said, hey, do you guys want to come with? It's cooler outside. You guys can go for a walk for like a little bit, and then I'll even bring you back home, because football practice is, you know, just, I don't want to sit there and watch it. I said yes. And when I said yes, she actually declined and she did not want to. And she said that she wasn't feeling good. So I was like, okay, that's fine. Like, Mom, we're just going to stay here. And this was the opportunity that she had to now commit the crime. So to kind of go back to the other, story, this is where she sat me in my, put me in my room, told me to turn around and close my eyes. And this is where the whole intuition thing happened. So we're going to fast forward all that because I've already spoke about it. And if you haven't heard it, go back to the other video because it's very descriptive. But what I want to talk about is the fire, because this actually is a huge thing. This is what she actually got arrested for, was arson. So let's talk about the arson part. After the whole intuition feeling, I played it off like I didn't know what was going on. I pretended like everything was fine because I didn't want to startle her or make her think that I was actually thinking anything. So I really honestly made her think that like nothing was happening. And I went into the kitchen and I started to do my nails. And I'm sitting there and I'm observing her and I'm watching her body language and just kind of observing what is going on to see like what actions I kind of need to take. And she had told me that her husband had called, and that's kind of what distracted me and made me go out of the room. And she told me that he was coming down and wanted to take her to dinner, but she had nothing to wear. So she asked if she could borrow some clothes. And I was like, yeah, go ahead and go in my closet and go look and, whatever you want, try it on. So before that, I had lit a candle in my room, like one of those little teacup candles where the incense go up. And I had done that. There's no reason as to why I did that. I just randomly did it before she went into the room. She had closed the door and I went back to go do my nails. And I'm sitting there and all of a sudden I hear her open the door. So I go in there and she tried on the dress and I'm like, oh, that looks really cute on you. And she's like, can I wear this? And I was like, yeah, that's fine. And then I start to smell something and I'm like, do you smell that? And she's like, no, smell what? And I was like, it smells like a burning smell. And I look over and the candle's out and I'm just like, how did the candle go out? And she's like, oh, I don't know. And I look up and like my fan isn't on, like the windows aren't open. It's not like windy or anything outside. So like in my head, I'm just like, how did this happen? And I smell like this weird smell. So I go searching through my room. I look under my bed. I look in the closet. I look in the drawers. I look in my brother's room. And I'm just like sitting there thinking like, what the fuck is happening? And at this point, I already had those intuition feelings about the knife to my back. So now I'm just like, do not let go of this feeling, Angelique. In my head, I was like, she's starting my closet on, not my closet. I stated, she's starting my house on fire. Like in my head, I was like, she's starting your house on fire. So what do I think is a great idea? I'm like, let me just go ahead and light another candle and test my theory. So I lit another candle, put it back into the room. And she's like, what are you doing? I was like, oh, I just want the candle to work. Like I want it to smell good. And I waited to see what she would do. And she goes, oh, can I try on this in the dress? And I'm like, sure. So she goes, okay. And she closes the door. She kind of like rushes me out of the room and closes the door. And I'm just like, this bitch is starting my house on fire. Like, you cannot convince me otherwise. So I stand next to my pantry, which is across the room from like my bedroom. And I'm just like speaking really loud, like, Cassandra, do you want some cookies? Do you want some chips? Like, and I'm sitting there watching and I can see her shadow pacing back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And I'm just like, something is going on in that room. So immediately when she opens the door, I barge my way in there and I'm like, why is the candle out again? Yeah, the candle's out again. So now I'm just like, what is going on, Cassandra? Like, what is happening? And she's like, I don't know what you're talking about. I said, I smell smoke. What is going on? And I start searching. Now I'm in panic mode. I search up and down, like everywhere. And sorry. Anyways, back to the story. I open my closet and everything's in flames. I had literally just looked in my closet not even a couple minutes ago and there was nothing in there. So it was really crazy to me how it was literally in flames. And that's when I went into full panic mode and I ended up calling my best friend on accident. He was just the last person that called me. He called 911 and I actually ended up putting the fire out 9 months pregnant. I don't even know what she was doing. I did like try to give her a pot and I do remember there was so much smoke in the room that we were coughing so much. So I opened my garage door and I literally had to like drag her outside because we were both coughing so much. And this is kind of the part where the paramedics, fire department, everybody kind of shows up. So at this point, I have reached my hands in the bag. I have found the butcher knives. I have found one of everything to take me and I am in complete shock. I am in complete shock that not only finding the butcher knives, but I'm also in shock on how well my instincts were and how well my intuition was, that gut feeling. I could not believe and wrap my head around the fact that this was all real and like this was all happening. As this was all going on, she had opted to go to the hospital. So they were getting her into the ambulance when I found the butcher knives. The ambulance had already took off. So at this point, my street has now been shut down as attempted murder, case. So they basically shut like one side of my street down and the other, nobody in, nobody out. I will say that a lot of this was a blur. I do remember sitting there on the couch and I kept repeating the same thing over and over again. Like, I told you she was going to stab me. I told you she was going to stab me. And that's all I kept saying. And honestly, that's like the only thing I remember of that night. I was in like I remember I did interview with them because there are tapes and CDs, like the CDs of me talking to the cops, and I don't even remember, but I've listened to them. So obviously I did. And I'm telling them the story. And it's exactly how I'm telling it to you guys. Like, it's crazy. I have told this story and you wouldn't believe how accurate it is to what I'm saying to you right now. So yeah, that night was a blur, but I do remember waking up that morning and finding out that she had left the hospital. And I almost felt like the cops weren't doing their job. At least maybe it was just because I felt like there should have been stuff. I felt like they should have like already known what was happening, that she was gone, found her. Like, I don't know. I've watched way too many crime shows and I'm like, how did they not have this already? But this was like a really slow investigation. And I do want to state that I also felt like they didn't believe me. After listening to my my CDs, like I almost felt like they were like joking with me and like mocking me, but I don't really know. Maybe that's just me being sensitive, but that's how I felt. I was a really bad kid in the town, and when I got pregnant, I had changed my whole life around. And yes, like I've ran into the law before for, dumb things, fights and drugs and stuff like that as a teenager, and I lived in a small town, so I felt like they were almost like judging me and they just didn't believe me. But I could be wrong. Could be. The next day, they had called me and asked me if I would be willing to go into the police office to call her and just pretend like I had no idea what was going on. Like I never found the butcher knives, like we weren't investigating her, and for me just to be like a friend to her. And I thought it was really weird, but they told me that she had told them that I was smoking marijuana in my room, and that is how the fire started. And I was like, that isn't accurate. Like, we were never doing that. So they wanted me to basically call her and get her to admit and confess that she was in my room by herself so that they can get her for arson. And I ended up calling her nonchalantly and being like, oh my gosh, are you okay? Like, you never called me after you got out of the hospital. And she had like no clue what was going on. So then I had asked her, like, Cassandra, did you tell them that we were smoking weed in my room and that is how like the fire started? And she was like, I would never do that. And I was like, okay, yeah, it was really weird. So then I started talking about the fire with her, and I was like, that was so strange, right? Like, you were in my room trying clothes on, and then all of a sudden, like, my closet's on fire. And she was just like, yeah, it was really weird. I was like, yeah, but you were in there, remember, by yourself? And she was like, yeah. And I think I was being way too intense because whoever was with her in the background was like, Cassandra, hang up the phone. And so like I instantly heard like this like, and then like it clicked. And the cops were like, somebody's with her, and they know that like the way you ask the questions, like it obviously set something off with them. And then they're like, who's this man with her? So that was like a whole different discussion because I wasn't even putting two and two together. So then later on, I again felt like they were not doing the investigation properly. So I felt like I needed to take it into my own hands. So I had done like a huge deep dive on Cassandra. I ended up finding out that her cousin is somebody that I knew from middle school. And we actually dated the same guy. And so I found this connection of who Cassandra was related to, and I ended up calling her. And I asked her, like, do you know Cassandra? And she was like, yes. And I told her, like, okay, and I word vomited it. I was like, she came to my house with butcher knives, a pair of scissors. I think she was trying to kill me. Like, I'm like literally word vomiting it to this girl. And she goes, oh my gosh, that's my cousin. And I was like, shit, like, oh no. Like, that's her cousin, like they're family. And she was like, I believe you. And that completely shocked me. That she believed me. She said, listen, my cousin is schizophrenic. She's manic depressive, bipolar. And at this time, it was called multiple personality syndrome. And so she stated she has like multiple personalities. And I was like, oh my gosh. And she was like, yes, like I believe this 100%. Like, I will tell my family, we will find her sister. Like, I thanked her. It was amazing. Like, I felt like I had made a big break in the case. And so I call like the detective, tell them what's going on. I give them all the contact information. All of that stuff goes on. I also found like news articles of her from like back, I don't know, in 2008 where she had ran away, and they had a news article on her stating that she was schizophrenic and that she had ran away and that she was a harm to herself and others. So I was giving all this information to the cops, like, here you go, here you go, here you go. Like, she lives here, she has family there. And I was like, please, 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 like, find her. And I don't know. If you ask me, I don't feel like they were doing, I don't feel like they were doing anything. And they ended up finding fingerprints on the teacup candle. So there was something right there. They did find her fingerprints on it. And then also they found out she wasn't pregnant. That's another big one. She was never pregnant. So when she went to the hospital and they did test her, there was no baby. So we were able to confirm that. And then it kind of made us all believe that she wanted my baby for herself. So that was the story that we like had painted. That's what we thought, that she was obsessed with having babies, because the cousin had told me that she used to lie about being pregnant, or she always like faked these pregnancies. And so I think that's why like she found it really believable of her trying to take a baby. And yeah, like it blew my mind. I felt like I was super unsafe because we could not find her. Like we called her and she answered, but now that she was onto it, like what was happening, nobody could find her at this point. Days go by. I end up getting preeclamptic. I go into labor. I'm in the hospital for a week. And I had a very traumatic birth. I had cops outside of my room to make sure that, you know, nobody like knew I was there. Like we had a special code to be able to get into my room. It was not the birth plan that I had thought it was going to be. This was not how I thought my birth plan was going to be. My first child, it was very traumatic. The experience of giving birth was insane, especially, it was bad. It was just a really, really bad situation. So when I had gotten home from giving birth to Ryland, I was terrified. I was terrified that she was going to come back after me. I had felt like I wasn't protected. I didn't sleep. My mom said that, you know, I refused to go back into my bedroom. I will say that. I refused to go in there. I took everything from there and moved it to the living room because I was so scared. Every time I looked in my closet, all I saw were flames. And my mom and dad said that when they would like go and wake me up, I would start swinging on them. Like it was just intense, guys. And then, like I stated, she is out and about. So, I want to say the first week of April, I get a phone call and my mom comes and wakes me up and she goes, Angelique, it's Detective Turner. It's Detective Turner. And I answer the phone and I'm like, hello. And she's like, Angelique, we have her. And I was like, what? She's like, we have her. She confessed everything. I was like, what do you mean? She's like, we have the confession. She is going to go away for a very, very long time. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I had not, that was the best sleep I ever got, was that night, because I had actually felt at peace. I felt like, oh my gosh, the person that tried to kill me, tried to take my baby, was, you know, all these things, she was finally behind bars. So it was amazing. It really, really was. And we're going to have to go into a part 4, and I'm so sorry, because then we went to trial, and then I'm going to tell you guys the huge plot twist that happened, because I was under the impression that she wanted to take my child because she could not have babies of her own, and she was obsessed with having babies. That was a lie. Maricopa PD wanted me to believe that. Pinal County wanted me to believe that, but it's all a lie. And we will find out in part 4 about how they screwed my whole case and how she only got sentenced for 8.5 years.